Hello, this is Logan Perkins of the Perks and News. In this episode of Let's Talk, I'm here with Jonathan Lazar, a local chiropractor who has a passion behind helping others in the medical field. Thank you for being with me today, Jonathan Lazar. And I just wanted to get started. How did you find out you wanted to become a chiropractor or be in that field?
So I always knew I wanted to help people. I knew I wanted to be a doctor, and I knew I wanted to also be involved in ministry. So I wanted kind of a short-term and long-term option for helping people.
Yeah.
And I was planning on going to medical school. I spent a lot of time with several different types of doctors, and I realized that there were a series of things that came up that made me realize, I don't think the world needs one more person prescribing a bunch of medication or doing a bunch of surgeries. Not that I have a problem with those things.
Yeah.
I just didn't feel like the world needed more of that. I felt like the world needed people who could allow the body to work the way it was designed to work. And so that's a totally different approach than what I was exposed to. And I thought, and then I asked around and people said, oh, that's what chiropractors do. So I said, perfect, I'll do that.
Oh, man. And do you have any personal connection to that?
Well, so interestingly enough, I was under chiropractic care all through high school, and I didn't really notice any changes with how I was feeling. Like, I was a really sick kid. By the time I graduated high school, I had multiple digestive surgeries. I had cancer and surgery for that. I was on 9 prescription medications every day.
Jeez.
And I didn't know there was an issue with that. Mm-hmm. Like, I didn't have an issue with that. But in looking back, I wasn't any healthier. I wasn't any more functional. Mm-hmm. I just kind of like managed sickness all the time. And so I did go to a chiropractor regularly all through high school and college.
Yeah.
That's not why I became a chiropractor, because I actually didn't notice any changes with how I felt.
Right.
But like when I went to the dentist, I never felt better either. So I didn't know that you're supposed to feel better. And it did help me, but I just went because I thought I was taking care of my spine and nerve system. And so I chose that as a career. I didn't really have an amazing personal experience with it yet, but once I got to chiropractic school is when I had a life-changing experience, and that's when I really narrowed in on what I was going to do as a chiropractor. But it wasn't until I got there that I experienced that.
Oh, geez. Yeah, and if you don't mind, what was that impact you had that made you, change the course?
Yeah, so chiropractic was my second career. I didn't know that that's what I was going to be doing. Mm-hmm. And so I was married and had my daughter at the time. And so I was in the week of final exams. My mom was having back surgery, ironically, in Michigan, but we lived in Iowa.
Okay.
My wife and daughter left to come to Michigan to be there for my mom. And I had a horrible migraine headache, which is something that was very common. I was on daily narcotics for migraines, among other things. But that was one of the strongest medications I was on. And so I'm in this really stressful situation. I get my neck adjusted like a normal chiropractic adjustment. Right. And then the next morning I was really sick with bronchitis and pneumonia. And so I'm stuck because do I do something about this? Like, the hospital wants to give me all this medication, but then I can't take my final exam tomorrow. I really don't know what to do with this.
Yeah, you gotta take that exam.
And you can't repeat it. So I asked somebody who was doing specialty training in the upper neck, working specifically at the level of the brainstem. I didn't know anything about that. I just talked to her because she was really passionate, and which could be a cool part of a conversation. Like, I don't care if you're a plumber, an electrician, a worship leader, a chiropractor. Like, people that have passion for what they do attract more people to help, which is really cool. And so she was really passionate, and I just asked her, hey, I don't know what to do in this situation. And she told me to come get adjusted, which was weird because I'd been getting adjusted for decades by that point. But long story short, she did this different analysis that nobody else did. She found pressure on my brainstem. She took the pressure off my brainstem very gently, which was super weird. I never experienced that.
And what's that process?
The assessment or taking the pressure off?
Taking the pressure off. I mean,
Yeah.
what's that like?
It's so in that type of work, I was lying on my side on an exam table.
Mm-hmm.
My head was supported on this headpiece, and then she used kind of her lower hand wrist area on the side of my neck under my ear to get the pressure off. But it felt like I was having my pulse taken. It was very gentle. And I learned later how that's possible, but at the time, I had no idea that you could do anything.
Just like that.
Yeah, it literally was. I mean, it was very specific as to how she calculated. It was like cutting a key to your front door. Like, it's very precise. But she did that, and I actually thought I got taken advantage of because it didn't feel like she did anything.
Right.
But then 2 hours later, I wasn't coughing. I was breathing very clearly, and I hadn't taken any medication for it. And it didn't happen right away, but over the course of the next year, I was able to get off blood pressure medication, antidepressants, anti-anxiety, narcotics for migraines, daily inhalers, allergy medication. I was able to get off every single prescription I was taking.
That's insane. So you're telling me, how long did that take? Just
I probably was getting checked on average maybe once a week during that time. I don't really remember, but I know that about a year later, it dawned on me, my blood pressure is normal, my brain chemistry is normal, I'm not dealing with seasonal allergies, I can breathe. It was just this crazy thing. And I realized at that point, not only do I have to do that, I have to be the best at it. I have to figure out what it is. I have to communicate it. I have to articulate it. I have to tell the world. And then, ironically, horribly, about 2 years after that, my brother died from pain medicine interaction. And that was a huge confirmation that there are people that are sick and suffering, not because there's nothing available, but because nobody has told them there's something else you can do that will actually fix the problem and not get you addicted to medication and not have all the risks of the surgeries. There's actually something you can do to fix that problem and not have to deal with it the rest of your life.
Man, so you spent your whole life almost taking these medications, going to a chiropractor.
Yeah.
And then it took this one time, the right person, right technique, whoosh, and you got better.
Exactly right.
That's insane. What do you think it was? I mean, you told she just came in, release that pressure. I mean, no one did that before.
Right. Well, actually,
or is it just
the day before I got sick, somebody put more pressure on my brainstem.
Who is it? Just like from a chiropractor, or
so that was from an experience. So when she took the specific X-rays of my upper neck, which nobody had taken those X-rays. So a big part of it is the assessment. A big part of it is where are you on the map. If you say, hey, how do I get to Hawaii?
Right.
Well, where are you right now? Because that will determine what directions I give you. Mm-hmm. And so the assessment is a really key factor there so that we can know where you are in your journey of getting better or getting healthy. So she did a different assessment. That was the first thing. Then she showed me right on my x-rays, hey, do you see how the top bone in your neck has moved over here to the left? And I said, well, that's weird. Yesterday I was adjusted on the right side. And she said, well, what did your x-rays show you last night? And I said, well, he didn't do x-rays. And she said, see, that's why it shouldn't be done that way. That's why you don't let somebody guess with your brainstem.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And so that's why it was so different. Her assessment was different. And then she used the right key. I mean, she used what needed to be done to get that fixed.
Man, one person changed your life. That made you change your course in your career. You said you want to be the best at it. How did that look as you're learning, as you're in school? So what was that? What were those years like, just trying to become the best?
Well, as with anything, and it might be scary in the context of health, but healthcare, but it really is failing your way forward. I mean, I hate to sound so cliche about that, but it's trying and training and studying harder than anybody else, working harder than anybody else. caring more than anybody else, and just not accepting mediocre as an option. Like, if in the words of Eminem, right, success is my only option, then you just do what needs to be done to get there. And Malcolm Gladwell talks about a 10,000 hour number to get to mastery of something. And so I would just say get to your 10,000 hours as fast as possible, because before you get to that 10,000 hour mark, you're not mastering anything. You're just kind of figuring it out. And so, but with healthcare, there's schooling, training, licensure boards, specialties, certifications, all that stuff. Right. And so I ended up doing 2 of those. I did 2 specialty certifications in the upper neck. That's right. Okay. Yeah, specifically. There are 8 people in the world with that double certification. And so I'm proud of that, but I don't say it to brag. I'm just saying of the hundreds of thousands of people doing this work, there are 8. Yes, there are 8 who have done that.
Why is that? I mean, why wouldn't you want to get this, extra certification or extra practice in? Like, what?
It would be the same.
In your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, it would be the same reason why not every allopathic physician is a pediatric neurosurgeon. I mean, advanced training is available for whoever wants it and can get accepted into those programs and do those things. But it's not for everybody. And I have a lot of colleagues that are doing amazing work helping tons of people. Yeah. So you don't need it to help people. You need it to help people the way I like to help people.
Okay.
But there are a lot of other ways to help people.
Yeah. Did that journey of trying to do your best as possible, get that mastery in your work, did that affect your personal life? I know you said you were married, had a daughter at the time. Did all that work, take a toll, or was it just your family was super supportive in, your dream, and you were being supportive as well?
Yeah, I think both. I mean, certainly it took a toll, and certainly while my colleagues were earning income, I was going further into debt to do more advanced training and things. So yeah, it took a toll. But also, while people were doing whatever it is they do in their personal lives, maybe they're studying and then going out on the weekends or on the evenings, I was really focused. And so I was home for dinner every night. I would give our kids a bath. I would tuck them in bed, and then I would get back to studying. I have an amazing wife, and she has always been incredibly supportive, but she would also know where to draw the line. When my career started taking off and I would get invited places to speak and those sort of things, she was a really good barometer for, hey, I think you should say no to those 3 opportunities, even though they're incredible for your career. Our kids are going to leave us someday, so why don't you use that time to invest in the kids? And without her voice of reason and her wisdom, I would probably be some divorced, absent father pursuing, the clout of an even bigger career. But I'm really grateful that that's not the case, because our faith, our family, the relationship we have with our kids, 2 of whom are teenagers now, right? We have an incredible relationship with our kids, but that is very much because of her. And she's been very supportive.
That's incredible. Man, I strive for that. One day, maybe. I hope so.
Sure.
Where would you say your career took off? Was it after all of your schooling and all of your training, or was it kind of during that people maybe have recognized your passion and your hard work?
That is a really cool question, and the clear answer is I was in practice for probably 6 or 7 years, maybe even 8. I'd have to look at dates, and I really struggled because it's one thing to be really, really good at something. You could be an amazing chef.
Right.
But if nobody knows about your restaurant, or you don't know how to hire good servers or good dishwashers, or, then there's a business acumen, there's a marketing, there's a CEO level, and there's a clinical side. I was really good at the clinical side, but just like a chef would be really amazing at making food, but I didn't have good and I had owned other businesses, but this was just a weird thing. And it took me several years of struggling in my own mind. Now, this is something that's really interesting. The two chiropractors that I knew growing up were the top of their game. They had amazingly huge practices. They had huge homes. They drove expensive cars. And not that that's a litmus test of success, but my point is, my perspective, that's all I knew. I didn't know that there was a such thing as, and they had been in practice 20 years before I ever met them.
Right.
I didn't really understand that, and so I felt like a failure my first 6 or 7 years in practice, not achieving that. But along the way, I would get these awards. I got this Career Achievement Award. We were awarded the 13th largest practice in the United States my 6th year in practice. But it didn't matter. I was like, I'm not there yet. And it was this weird mindset. I wasn't expressing gratitude. All I was focused on is where I was falling short. And it was super hard for myself and everybody around me. Then I went through this horrible Job, if I reference the Bible here, this horrible Job situation where within a few months, it was like a country song. Like, my grandma died. I broke my dominant arm, and I adjust with my hands. There were all these things, and then I had this other doctor in practice with me that made some bad business decisions against me, and in about 2 weeks' time, I lost $600,000. I mean, like, career-ending stuff shows up, and I'm at my wit's end. I think I have to file bankruptcy. I feel like a loser. I wasn't prepared. If I was a good leader, I would have had $700,000 in savings. So when I just went through all this crap, but through that, I changed some strategies. I realized the only way to fail is to give up. I changed my mindset. I started thinking differently. I read a few key books in the matter, which we can get into at some point if that's relevant.
For sure.
And then things just started changing, and the right people, places, and things started showing up. And then our practice just skyrocketed after that. But I don't know if this is a universal law or if it's just my own thick-headedness, but I really believe I had to go through those things and I believe that we grew not in spite of the crap that happened. I believe we grew because of those things. I believe it was the trauma that built the muscles, if you will, that allowed us to grow into areas where I didn't even think were possible. And so I hope that's not the case for everybody. But that was absolutely my experience. And now we have totally different problems. We have much classier problems. And now our strategy is not how do we get the message out, how do we get a bunch of patients to come in. It's and how do we find lives to change that need our services. It's how do we do that as a team now. Now I have 2 other doctors on my team, and it's just a different strategy. But that's, I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh, no, yes. Really interesting. Wow. You said, you were thinking differently through that trauma. How were you thinking differently?
Well, before I felt like all these, I behaved like a victim. And had you called me out on that, I would have probably been offended, which is how I was thinking. And I thought all these bad things were happening to me, which is how a victim would think. Right. All these things are happening to me. And whether it's true or not, I heard Grant Cardone. I was listening to the 10X Rule, his book, The 10X Rule. And I heard him say in the very beginning part of his book that where you are today is the result of your thoughts and actions to this point. And I was like, that's total crap. How dare you say all these bad things that have happened are a result of my thoughts and my actions? I can't control what other people do. Yeah. I can't, right? And then I thought, wait a minute. That's how I currently think. So if my life is a result of my thoughts and actions to this point, whether I'm offended as all get out or not by such a crass statement, maybe I need to think differently starting with this right here, right now. Maybe I need to look at this differently. And I just kind of unclutched from it happened to me. And I just started thinking, what if it happened for me? And that totally changed the way I started looking at stuff. And, my faith drives everything I do. And so I do believe that God honored that and allowed, ultimately I believe it's up to him, but I have to work as if it's up to me. And so I started thinking differently at that point. I was in a really deep depression. And I also heard Tony Robbins say, if you're depressed, you're focused on yourself and you need to be focused on other people. And then the third component was I felt like a really unhappy person, but it wasn't because of stuff. I had, and still do, an amazing wife, amazing kids. They were all healthy. Like the things that really matter were there. Yeah, I was really unhappy. And I realized it's not about the stuff. It's not about stuff outside of me that's going to make me happy or not. I realized that from like a neuropsychology standpoint that our neurology is designed to keep us alive. That's it. It's not designed to make us happy. Our job is to make sure we're happy or not. And if our gift to each other could be today that happiness is an inside job. We can't control the stock market. We can't control our business outcomes. We can't control the health of our family. I just lost my mom last month and my best friend on the same day. Those are bad things that happen. But we can still choose, in spite of our circumstances, to be happy or not. And I haven't figured it out. I'm not there yet all the time. But I'm aware, and that really was a turning point, is my ego's job is to keep me alive. It's my job to keep me happy. And there was just this freedom in like, oh my gosh, it's not my circumstances. It's not my circumstances because they're going to be crappy. There are currently crappy circumstances, but I can still be happy in the midst of those. And those three things, think differently. Depression means my eyes are on myself. Look to others if you really want to start changing people's lives. And I became almost addicted to serving other people. And that's when stuff really started to take off. But had I not gone through that loss, that depression, that fear, that worry, that facing bankruptcy, which by the grace of God, we never had to file, it totally turned around and we started rocking it out like gangbusters. But those three things, and the third one was happiness is an inside job, that completely changed the trajectory of my career, life, marriage, relationships, faith, everything. And it was cool. It was a huge turning point.
That's incredible. Wow. And man, so from then, where are you now? With your business, I know you say you just lost your mom and your best friend.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry for that. Praying for you guys. But yeah, where are you now?
We are in a peculiar situation where what got us to the success level of our practice is not going to take us where we want to go now. So, in the Bible, the Israelites were led out of captivity in Egypt into the wilderness for 40 years. While they were there, they kept wanting to go back. Sarah Grove says, the past is so tangible, I know it by heart. We sometimes want to go back to our comfort zone of things that we already know. But then she says, those roads were closed off to you when your back was turned. And so we can't go back. We can't go back, even though we've outgrown those things. The things that used to fit me can't hold the things I've learned. So I want to go back because it was easier, it was tangible, it was myself and a support team, and I touched every patient and talked to every patient. But I reached a capacity level and then couldn't sustain that any longer. So we had to get help. So right now, my struggle in a really cool way is how do we deliver the same world-class care, best in world services through other people? And that would be like the worship leader putting the guitar down, getting off the stage, and then mentoring other worship leaders. And as a doer, performer, driver, that's very hard to do. But it's definitely the right thing, and amazing stuff is happening, and it's really uncomfortable. But we have to, as leaders, we have to embrace that discomfort. If we stay in our comfort zone, growth never happens in our comfort zone. And so as uncomfortable and awkward it is, and how much I say to myself, oh, I hate this.
Yeah.
Don't tell anybody, but I don't always know what to do, right? No leader does. But we're moving forward, we're growing in spite of all these losses. We're having a record February.
For sure. That's great.
Amazing stuff is happening, and it is so uncomfortable, and it's so awesome at the same time, you know?
Man, that's great. I know you mentioned before, you're reading a lot of books to learn, leadership, to learn how to deal with things, learn new tricks. What would you say your top 5 books that you read?
From a mindset standpoint, the 10x rule was huge. Grant Cardone. I don't subscribe to everything he says, but that changed. It stretched your mind like a parachute works better when it's open, and he really stretched. I think I read all of his stuff. It really stretched my mind a ton. And the gist of that was, if you're on a 30-minute car ride, that 30 minutes feels like forever. If you're on a 3-hour car ride, you pass that 30-minute mark and you're like, oh, that wasn't so bad at all. And it's to take what you think you want. If you want to earn $100,000 a year, for example, that's a tangible, quantifiable goal. I want to earn $100,000 a year. Okay, great. Grant Cardone's philosophy is 10x that, and make your new goal. I want to earn $1 million a year. And then you're like, well, what the heck? I'm trying to earn $100,000. Right? Why would I? And his point, I don't know whether it's true or not, but what he says is, it takes the same amount of energy to earn $1 million as it does 100,000. So just skip it. Just go right for the million. Go right for the 10x. And if you really suck wind and fall short and only collect $700,000, you just blew the tar out of that $100,000 mark, right? And so, I mean, there are more important things in life than what we earn, but that's an easy thing. So 10x rule was huge. Essentialism by Greg McKeown. He's amazing. He's been on our radio show, and I had the coolest conversation with him. You can get that back on our old podcast, where he talks about life needs to be, it's a less but better approach, really insane lifestyle thing. Gosh, I don't know anything by Brene Brown.
Brene Brown.
B-R-E-N-E, Brene Brown, on vulnerability and shame, on just embracing the fact that we need to lead with vulnerability. All of her stuff. Dare to Lead, I just finished. I can't think of all of them right now, but any book by Brene Brown is an incredible experience on how to lead better, how to lead from the heart. Dave Ramsey's EntreLeadership, I really love that book. Anything by Michael Hyatt. Yeah, his most recent one I read was Free to Focus. That's huge, man. If you take a distracted society and then put them in the workplace or in the vision place or the calling place, nothing's getting done. I mean, people are so distracted, myself included. And to learn, how to focus, to literally think about that concept, free yourself up to focus, amazing things can happen. That's why lasers work. That's why knives work, because it's a focused amount of energy into a blade. That's incredible. How many did you say?
5. I said 5.
That might have been 4.
To next that.
Right. And then, so I'm reading one right now that's really boring, but it's fascinating. It's financial health for entrepreneurs or something. Mm-hmm. So as an entrepreneur, as I've had a couple of businesses that I've started, as an entrepreneur, there's stuff I'm really good at.
Yeah.
And but like finances, accounting, it's like a foreign language. And I've owned this practice that we have for 12 years. Mm-hmm. So I have to surround myself with people that are really good at that, but I also want to know what I'm doing. Like, I think a good leader maybe doesn't have to do all the work, but I think a good leader knows at least
a little bit
how to do it if they have to. So that's fascinating to learn that. Yeah, lots of stuff. One of my favorite books recently has been The Richest Man in Babylon. That was probably The Four Agreements. That's an amazing book.
By who?
I'd have to look that one up. I don't remember. But just really incredible stuff. And if you invest in yourself, if you I don't know if it's true. I've heard it said if you will read 30 minutes a day, if you'll stretch your mind 30 minutes a day, you can double your income every 6 months. I don't know if it's true, but we should try it. We should challenge each other and see.
I'll see. Yeah. You know, I'm a student. It's not like I have a huge mark to hit, you know, so maybe.
Yeah.
And you said you have a podcast. How long have you been running that for?
So the podcast is technically our radio show repurposed. So I've done a weekly radio show on WMUZ 103.5 for 9 years. And every live show that we do on that is repodcasted. It's called Your Weekly Checkup. You can just find that on iTunes.
For sure.
Yeah. I don't know how many seasons. We have 9 seasons. I don't know how many episodes we have because we don't do a live show every week.
Okay.
But yeah, it's really cool. People all over the world get to hear the message of hope and healing, and that we're fearfully and wonderfully made, and our bodies are designed to heal themselves and designed to adapt. And whenever they're not, I don't care if you have a headache or numb fingers or diabetes or an addiction or fertility issues, it doesn't matter, or autism or anxiety or depression, it doesn't matter. If your body's not adapting, there's a problem somewhere in there because it was designed to do that, right? And so our job as chiropractors is to find that interference, find where the adaptation isn't occurring. That happens in the nervous system. Our job is to detect that and correct that. And the rule is nature needs no help. It just needs no interference. So we just find the interference, we remove the interference, we allow your body to work how it's designed to work, which is to heal, adapt, thrive, function, grow, develop, all those things.
Man, what's the focus of the podcast? Is it for your the chiropractic field, or is it really on personal?
It's the show, the radio show, the live show is designed to be a call-in, ask the doctors. So we have topics. You know, we'll have a topic that we are talking. Our show last week was on stress and how stress kills us sooner, and it's the silent killer and all these things. And so, but then somebody might call in and ask about diabetic neuropathy. So whatever people call in on is what we answer. But so it's topic driven, we'll answer questions, and then it's repurposed. But what's cool is it's a really hope driven thing. A lot of people, we don't ask them, but a lot of people will call in that are patients in our office or the office we do their show with in Troy, and they'll call in and share their wins and their stories. And it is so cool, the hope that people are hearing. Yeah. My kid is on the autism spectrum, or there are people that were planning their suicide because of chronic pain. And our care helped them, and they're alive, and they've shared their stories. Wow. And it's cool.
Man, as you know, in our culture, mental health is huge. It's blown up, past anyone would have thought, 10 years ago. Depression, anxiety, stress, all these things have been homed in on and focused on, even governments, schools, businesses. But it seems like you're saying that those things you don't need prescriptions for.
I don't want to send that message because I don't believe that's true.
Okay.
I think there are times that is the case.
For sure.
Just a lot less than we think. For example, 21 of the last 21 public shootings involve somebody taking a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, an SSRI, which would be like Paxil, Prozac, Wellbutrin. There's a group of anti-anxiety medications. I don't believe that means we should never take them.
For sure.
But I do believe that we should try everything else first. So I do believe that as a society we need to be screened for brainstem pressure, because the brainstem is what develops, produces, and distributes, if you will, serotonin and dopamine. If those levels are off, that has to be corrected, or you're just kind of taking the batteries out of a smoke detector, right? So are there times we need it? I do believe there are times we need it. I just think it's a lot less than our society. I think we run for first order change. And what I mean by that is I don't like how I feel. Therefore, I want to mask it, numb it, with medical care, cut it, burn it, freeze it. I want to do something to change it because I don't like, but pain can very much be a warning sign, whether it's physical or emotional or spiritual or relational or financial. Pain is simply a warning sign. And so if you wouldn't put electrical tape over your check engine light or your low fuel tank light, or if you wouldn't take batteries out of your smoke detector, then I don't suggest doing that anywhere in your health either. Now, can there be a problem with the wiring and the check engine light, and somebody said this wiring is wrong, it's going to be 3 weeks until your new part is in? Go ahead and sure, then you can put tape over it. But if it's not that, we run as a society for make feel better fast, right? And so we want first order change, and we'll get that with medications, we'll get that with illicit drugs, we'll get that with sex, we'll get that with alcohol, we'll get that with shopping, gambling, entertainment. We have all these counterfeit solutions to living whole, complete, fulfilled lives. And we're all running to first order change island of, I don't like this, I want to feel better. Well, what do? I'm going to go have sex with somebody I don't know so that I can feel better. Well, you might get that dopamine hit in the moment, and that might be your drug of choice in the moment, but you're going to feel horrible after that. Like, talk to people who are on first order change island all the time. I'm going to shoot up crack cocaine. Okay, you'll get your hit for sure, and you'll feel better in that moment. But what about when you come down? And so we're all about second order change. It's uphill, it takes time, it takes money. A lot of times insurance doesn't cover it. In fact, I would say insurance really doesn't cover any second order change help. But get in the boat, let's get to second order change island, and let's fix what's really going on underneath that, and then you can start to live an open, free, fulfilled life in ways that you never thought were possible. So we're kind of anti first order change and pro second order change, you know?
Well, yeah. That's crazy to think. I've never heard it, expressed that way. First order change, second order change. Where'd you get that from? Is that from a book? Or
that's from lots of therapy, man. Yeah, so that would be and I have some friends that are, so the work that we do is pretty tied to addiction work as well, and so we actually have had a lot of really amazing results helping people with addiction, whether it's pain medication, whether it's illicit drugs. Our work, when we get the nervous system working well, addictions start to respond really well to that.
For sure.
And so I've done some work personally as a patient and professionally with addiction specialists. And by the way, we all have addiction issues. And so while I'm not an addiction specialist myself, it's fascinating work to me, and I like to know how things work. And a lot of our behaviors are driven by addictions, for sure. And so, yeah, that wasn't from any book. That was just from kind of a big amalgamation of lots of conversations and therapy and help, myself, that I've gotten from other professionals.
Would you say, if you could say one thing, tell the listeners one thing, what would you tell them about that addictions, or just what they're going through out there? Because everybody's going through something. What would you tell them?
You're already enough.
You're already enough.
Yeah. Brene Brown said in maybe several of her books, she talks about hustling for worthiness. And what if we're already enough? I mean, if from a faith perspective, and I don't like to separate those, but I don't know what your listenership is. From a faith perspective, if we're all kids of the King, that by itself, if our identity really is in that, then we really should realize that we're already enough, right?
Right.
And then if we're hustling for our worthiness, that changes the game. Because we're never going to truly be worthy enough. But if we realize that we've already been given that gift of being enough, being worthy enough, and we can receive that, which is all love, right? We've got to love ourselves enough to be able to receive that. And then if the hustling can stop, if the contriving can stop, if the scrapping can stop, we're scrapping to prove something that it was never intended for us to prove. We never were designed to have to prove to ourselves or others that we're enough.
Yeah.
So if we're just already enough, if it's already perfect, if it's already there, and we're just kind of getting rid of some of the extra stuff, I think Ram Dass, as you said this, we're all just walking each other home. Yeah. Like, if we can just embrace that, I think the world looks very, very different.
Wow. Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing your story today on this episode of Let's Talk, Mr. Lazar. And thank you guys for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode. Sure.
If I could just close out with one more thing,
Yes.
and you can cut it whatever, but is that Dr. B.J. Palmer said, "You never know how far-reaching something you may think, say, or do today will affect the lives of millions tomorrow."
Hmm.
And I would just encourage you, me, everybody listening, to find out what it is that you're passionate about, that you're on this earth for, and come from a place of enough.
Mhm.
You're already enough. But then go forth and serve. And just whatever it is that you're on this planet for, go do it the absolute best you can, because you never know how far-reaching something you may think, say, or do today will affect the lives of millions tomorrow. That's a really big concept.
Wow, yeah. Well, thank you for that.
Sure.
Yeah, well, thank you for coming in. I appreciate your time. And, I hope you have a great one, Mr. Lazar.
Awesome. Thanks
Yeah.
for having me.